Welcome to the We Are the Medicine podcast. In this episode, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with spiritual powerhouse Victoria Haffer, someone I consider not only to be a leader in the healing arts arena, but a no BS, tell it like it is confidant for myself. She is a force to be reckoned with, and I am proud to call her my colleague, my teacher, and my friend. She inspires me to be bolder, to be passionate, and most of all, to be the ultimate version of me when I can't even see it. Victoria has facilitated massive transformation for thousands of empathetic light leaders, healers, and animals around the world. She has dedicated her life to teaching people how to see and be the magic in everyday life through the animal and elemental queendom. Victoria Haffer is the founder of the Center of Possibilities, is a spiritual teacher and an oracle with a master's in science. She's an author, as well as a yoga therapist and meditation teacher, a Reiki master, trauma support specialist, an international wellness expert, and practitioner of vibrational medicine for people and animals. She currently lives in North Carolina with her beloved and her fur babies. And I am so very grateful to you, Victoria, for taking the time out of your busy life to speak with me and to share with listeners your experience of this event we call life. The premise of this show is about how our stories, our experiences are our medicine, but also they're the medicine for the collective consciousness. Every time we expand and transform our own lives, we help to expand and transform the lives of everyone on the planet. So welcome, Victoria. Take it away.
Thank you, Danya.
You're welcome.
So wonderful to be here. So honored to be here in the space of your creation, your podcast, just shining your love and light all over the world.
Yep. I needed to find a way to start speaking to people, right? And even if it's just you and me listening to it, I'm still speaking. So we're good to go. Right. Well, I'm so thrilled that you're here. So we're going to start today with kind of a big question, and feel free to answer it however you're called. But I would like to know a little bit more about your life story and how you have arrived in this space that you are today.
The book I'm writing the book in greater detail than obviously I will share today on the cast. I do believe that I was divinely guided. You know, everything I've done has, as we know, brings us to this point of where we are today. And I don't know that as a young girl that I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I was always pretty driven and connected. You know, I started literally at the age of 14 years old as a fitness instructor at the YMCA. So I was telling all the big boys what to do, slow down on the Nautilus equipment. And so, I started in the body realm of fitness. So that place of, teaching people about nutrition and health and wellness. And, I did that for a good 20 years, and I, mastered that and worked in high level management. And the thing is, though, I started to look at why are so many people joining gyms and not going to the gym? Right?
That's a good question.
I had the observation of the shooting, everybody shooting all over themselves. And so I got really fascinated with the mindset piece. And that's when I kind of found I found Tony Robbins in the 80s, and, worked with him and had all his tapes and listened to, when I was, I don't know, early 20s, maybe late teens, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. So as I look back on myself as a younger person, I clearly was connected in, right? I was plugged in to the, to that space of really those the trendsetters in this mind body world, mind body spirit world, really. And so it was fitness, and then I got into yoga. I started teaching yoga 18 years ago, before it was on every street corner. And um, I lived in an ashram. I was the director of a yoga retreat center. I trained with a lot of yogi masters and teachers from all over the world. And I've always been, my archetype is student teacher, right? Like I love to, if I had to choose, I couldn't. Like if you were to say either you teach or you learn, you couldn't, I would die before I had to choose between either. So I've always been, in that space of wanting to learn. We know that knowledge is power, and experience is power, even more so. So I love that aspect of, and then as all of that was happening for me, the spiritual aspect was that it was underlying that theme. I found Reiki in my early 20s. I mean, I'm 56. Oh my, I don't even know how old I am. I'm older than 55, or I'm 55. I'm not sure. But anyway, so just to give the idea of like where I've come and how long I've been in the world of learning and growing and transforming. Like Tony Robbins says, if you're not growing, you're dying, basically. And so that is my belief system, right? And the mindset piece, and really helping and supporting and empowering mostly women. I work with all genders and all of it, but mostly women is who I've been connected to. And the deep dive, the digging deep of do people really want to change? What inspires people to create the transformation? And what we typically find is most people are just comfortable. You're just comfortable, right? So if the pain isn't great enough, we know that pain can be such a great motivator for change, right? I know you know that. All right. So most people are, oh, I wish I could lose 10 pounds. Well, clearly you don't want to lose 10 pounds bad enough. Like the pain isn't great enough to create and choose something else, every single day. But again, I love the science aspect, and I have a master's in science and, statistics and research and all that. And then I got to a point where the spirituality piece started to come in so strongly for me. And when I say spirituality, I mean that what gives us meaning and purpose in life, right? What gets us, what's the driving force that gets us out of bed in the morning? And for me, spirituality is my connection through my higher self, right? Through the part of me that is all knowing, all loving, and non-judging, that is connected to all that is in creation. So whatever that is, whatever the name is that anybody calls it. I'm not a religious person. Like I said, I'm a spiritual person, and it's really my driving force today. And so what I really teach people, how to trust their inner knowing, how to trust themselves, and how to receive and perceive information from through your higher self, because we are the universe, right? We were just talking about that right before.
Yeah.
You are the universe. So it's people are saying, oh, I'm waiting for a sign. You are the sign. Like, stop. Hi, what do you want? Like, that's a hard question. Like you and I were literally just chatting about this on the phone a few days ago, right? What do you want? Because we're so programmed to focus on, that we have such a strong negative mind, which is we need a negative mind. It's not that we want to kill it or squash it or we don't want it. That's the discerning part of us that makes us think and doesn't just jump into things. But it's like where your energy goes, your energy grows, right? So it's like, what are we focusing in on? And yes, the ego trains us to, we want to make sure we're safe, right? Like, is this safe? Is this relationship safe? Is this job safe? Is me selling all my belongings, and moving to a tropical island, is that safe? right? Going on a silent retreat for 3 weeks. Is that safe, right? Like the body. So it's like teaching women, how to feel safe in their own bodies so that, because the embodiment piece is so important. So many of us, especially, healers, light leaders, empaths, intuitives, Reiki, yogis, whatever, when we look in that whole group of people, which will probably be a big part of your audience, is in being in that space, we're very knowledgeable, right? We know a lot, right? Like if you were to see my book, how many books, I don't know, you and I don't know if we've talked about who has more books. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure, but I'm sure we have many duplicates.
So knowing something and then being able to embody it, right? So two different things. And I'll share, like I used to certify and teach personal trainers, travel all over the world, and then I had my own yoga school. And I had every single meditation and yoga book in the world, and I knew a lot, but honestly, I was not practicing every day. Like I knew there was the value in the practice, the meditation practice and all, but it was like I was so in the knowledge aspect, but I wasn't allowing for that information to get in, to the rest of my body. I remember sitting with one of my Kundalini yoga teachers, Hadikar from New York City. She's amazing. She's a friend, and she was my teacher in my Kundalini yoga teacher training. And I remember us talking and me saying that, talk about knowing things. And I said, knowledge is power. And she said, oh, Victoria. She said, knowledge isn't power. Experience is power. And it was sort of like, it really hit home, because I was like, yeah, I know all these things. And then it was like this light bulb went off. Yet, how often am I sitting in deep meditation? So that it's sort of like, just without judging, without beating ourselves up, just whoever's listening at this time, just again, how often are you saying, yeah, I know, and however, are you not doing that thing that you quote unquote know, that if you did that thing, it would change your entire fucking life, right? Like it would just blow shit up,
Yes. Yes. I've been there. I'm kind of still there. But yes, it's a very fine line between thinking that we know what we should be doing and then just not practicing it. Like you just have to take the step over the line and just start doing it. I know it's probably the same reason why people don't go to the gyms, right? I feel so amazing after I do yoga. I feel so amazing after I've done an Ayurvedic treatment for myself. And I have all of that at my fingertips. And I do have the time actually right now, but I'm not immersed in it every single day. It's almost like there's this space has the energy of it, and I'm just basking in that energy right now because I don't have to do anything. I feel good. I don't need that. And then all of a sudden, like our phone call, I wasn't crying on the phone, but it was still this
Right.
space that I found myself in yet again. And yeah, when we find something that works, and I'm learning from everyone that I have been speaking with and everyone that I interact with, that that's the thing. You have to put it into practice. You just have to. And what are the drawbacks of it? We like to do this pros and cons game, but and like you said earlier too, if you're not in enough pain, it's not going to be important to you.
Right.
It's
Because
not going to.
if you're comfortable, like I always say, pain is our greatest teacher. Right. So it's
Yes.
like we've all heard the meme that everything we want is on the other side of our comfort zone. Right. Like that's no surprise. And what I found in deep diving with my clients is the self sabotage. And typically the self-sabotage is actually a part of us that needs to be heard.
Mhm.
And so that's why I do believe you can heal yourself. I do believe, I listened to your manifesto yesterday on your podcast and it was beautiful. And I do believe all that. And I do believe that sometimes people need a support system, even if it's initially, because a lot, if and how is if you're that person that we just talked about, that you've read every book, you've done a lot of workshops, you have all the online programs, and things are still the same. That's when you know that you probably would benefit from working with um, uh, someone who's definitely trained in trauma, because a lot of times there's a lot of coaches and healers that are not doing their own shadow work. So ask them about it. And if they don't know what you're talking about, then run the other way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be forever, right? It's like the whole thing is we both know that 5% of our knowing, our conscious aspect of us, is what is doesn't run the show, right? So flip it. 95% of what we don't know is actually running the show, right? The subconscious, the stuff that's sitting in the shadows and
Yes.
below the surface, because the surface stuff is, I had right before I had just had a client leave about a half hour ago, and we were chatting about a bunch of things, and she said, oh yeah, well, I know my mother was just doing the best that she could, and then I said, I know that the adult you knows that. Your conscious, adult, mature self knows that, but your inner child doesn't know that, or your inner teen, right? So it's like when you start to realize that there's different parts of us who, especially if you grew up in a really, dysfunctional kind of family, then you got to give attention to the parts of you that weren't seen, that weren't heard,
Well, and
that
I don't even know if it's not even so much dysfunctional, because honestly, I had a really great childhood, right? And it wasn't until I was 36 and I became sober that I was like, fuck, all these things
Mhm.
kept coming up and kept coming up. And I, in no way, you know, for the most part, I was a happy child on the surface. But now that I'm an adult, I can see and I can hear from that little girl who is constantly needing that reassurance from me because she never got it. And it's nobody's fault. That's the biggest thing that I really think is important, that even if you think that you had this, pretty normal, whatever normal is, childhood, it doesn't matter, because as long as if you were told, I can't tell you how many times I was told to stop being so sensitive. And when I would get angry or whatnot, I was sent to my room to figure it out. And until I could calm down, I couldn't come out. And that is traumatic for a small child,
Sure.
because all she's trying to do is have an emotion. And when it's not okay, like, it sends all these
That's
mixed
right.
signals. And then, like you said, the ego steps in and is like, okay, I got you. I got you. We're just going to go play with our, art supplies. And
We don't need it. We don't need anybody else. And I'm glad, Danya, I'm glad you said, it's not like you have to be in this abusive, physically or sexually abused, or even severe neglect. It can show up in so many different ways, and the other thing is, like you said, it's nobody's fault. Like, our parents are all just trying to do the best. They're learning, maybe they read Dr. Spock's book. I'm not sure, let the baby cry. I'm not even sure, but if they are trying, but then the information they're getting, like, is not great. Like, if you think of now how parents are parenting, I feel on the opposite end of the continuum now. It's like, it's sort of like the purely positive dog trainers that just go off, like, don't ever say no to your dog ever, you know. And it's like, you know, where's, you know, they need structure, they need discipline, they need to know that you're there for them, and honesty as well, because I think that we think that our kids don't can't handle the truth. And in a, you know, it's sort of like the congruency, just like, you know, I work with animals, I work with horses, and they'll pick up on your lack of congruency. Kids are way more, right? Like way more sensitive, empathic, intelligent, sentient beings than we give them credit for. Like, you know, again, I did not have children. I have fur babies, and that's a great, you know, that was my choice, and I'm sticking to it, and I'm, there's no regrets there. However, when we start to realize that we can learn as much from our kids as kids can learn from us, you know, and start to kind of unravel that, you know, this is what my parents did, this is what their parents did. Like, we know that we can the generational trauma, right? Like, it can stop here. And again, going back to what you said about the fact that maybe you didn't have, quote unquote, a dysfunctional childhood, but there were moments in time when you were a child that, I mean, yeah, you were sensitive. I was sensitive, like highly sensitive person, empath, whatever you were, you've been like that. Like, you came in that way, right? And so, but often, a lot of times, our parents don't even know what to do with us, right? We're so, because there's so much going on. We're, you know, such intricate, emotional, creative. And if you don't have like a mentor, you know, like an aunt or a neighbor, somebody that is like a little bit older, that's just like, Danya, you're so amazing and wonderful and exciting and beautiful and brilliant, and all your uniqueness and weirdness. It's like, it's what the world has been waiting for. We didn't get that, right, as kids. So then we're like, because we didn't fit into the mold, you know, of that, you know, nobody puts baby in a box, you know, then it's like we make ourselves wrong. And then that's the infliction of the self-judgment.
Yeah, and it can make you feel very alienated when you have a large family that you've come from, and it appears in your perspective of everybody else is, well, no one else is having this struggle. There must be something wrong with me, you know? And so you choose different things in your experiences to escape from that, until you can't anymore, until the pain is too much. And then everything that you have been escaping from knocks on your front door all at
Bam!
once and says, I'm here. I think of Jack Nicholson and The Shining, you know, here's
Here's
Johnny.
Johnny. Oh my God, I was so traumatized from that movie.
Oh, I was too. Yeah. I still can't even watch it without getting goosebumps and chills, and
That's
just kind of
crazy.
pulling the covers up over my face. But I also think that it's important for people to hear that, and I heard this just the other day from a 102-year-old woman. Her name is Gladys McGarry. She is been dubbed the mother of holistic medicine. And she just wrote her latest book, and I'm forgetting the title, but her whole life, she has considered her patients colleagues, because she believes, like you and I, in their own innate abilities to heal. She believes in their power to heal. She believes that what she does for people, you know, they can't do for themselves. But the other side of that is, now that I've provided you with X, Y, and Z, now we get to work together to bring out your healing abilities. of yourself. Like, it's not, I can give you a prescription, I can do some surgery kind of thing, but then you have to go home and live your life. And so she has always seen this kind of teamwork with her and her patients, her clients, whatever she called them colleagues. And I can see that name, that definition changing amongst, the coach and the student and the teacher scenario too, because as much as we love to think that we are inspiring someone or helping someone, all we're doing is shining the light on their own magic so that they can do it themselves. And so in that way, we work in tandem. No one knows any more than anybody else. Most of us have just forgotten.
Right. I was just going to say, we just help them remember. I mean, that's it, right? So collective consciousness, if indeed, we are multidimensional beings who live in physical form, and our souls are connected to the Akashic records, hence all of the information that we've ever learned, known, blah, 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 is we have access to that. That's what it is. So we teach people how to get the fuck out of their own way so that they can access their divinity, right? Like, that's it. And I know it sounds easy. And, it took me, 30 years to be able to do it for myself. Yeah. And so, but maybe it doesn't have to take that long, right? So the thing is, I made all the mistakes I did, so it's like, we can see in others what they can't see in themselves. And
I'm not sure the learning ever ends, though, right?
Right.
We're learning until our last breath, every single moment. So
absolutely.
I think that there might be a little bit of a stigma out there that, I don't need a coach. What do I need a coach for? What do I need someone to, shine the light on for something for me? I'm fine. I'm fine. Oh, but yeah, that low back pain just isn't going away, or that neuropathy in my feet, or I have constant migraines and headaches, but I'm fine. I'll just pop a prescription and I'll be fine. And we are our own medicine if we could just give ourselves the credit in doing so. And sometimes we need that little push. Sometimes we need someone to shove us out the front door and say, now go and be your magic. Go and, and like you said, we can read all the books that we want, but unless we're experiencing contrast and struggles in our life, like, I think two of the biggest words for me over the last year of my life have been contrast and resistance. I love them now. Just yesterday I had this situation where I was walking around like this ping pong ball just everywhere. So I called a friend. I was like, I'm coming over. And she sat down with me for 5 minutes and just talking it out. We're on the same wavelength. She's been on my podcast before, Corey. And because I was so mired in my own feces at the moment, she was like, she cleared it off. She's like, this is what it is. This is what it is. And I'm like, oh, duh. And she's like, but did you see what you did? She's like, a year ago, you would have ruminated in this for days and weeks. She's like, it took you 3 hours. That's huge. And when you can see your own progress in all of your experiences in your life, it's just so freeing. It feels so amazing. And I think part of our purpose here is just to feel good, damn it.
I think all of our purposes, I think our entire purpose, I mean, we are divine, we are perfect children of God, Goddess, the divine mother, the divine father, whatever you want to, whatever name you have for it. And it is our divine purpose to enjoy with joy and ease, right? Like, it really, the greatest lie that we have been told and sold is that we are separate from source. And that the answers are outside of us. That's your traditional, that's the religion, ideologies of what has been sprout out, you're a sinner, and all these things that it's like you're not, you have to bow to something outside of you. The guru is dead. You are the guru.
Yeah. Well, my path has taken me, I thought I had recovered from my Catholicism years and years and years ago, but I realized that I haven't. There's still some lingering things hanging out in the shadows. But I think it's, and this is my, personal opinion, and this is my podcast, so I can say what I want to. I think the fact that, we're told as infants, you come into this world with original sin, and that you need to be baptized to get it to wash away. Like, what child comes into this world like that? What child? And
Yeah.
whether they can speak or not, like, they're feeling that energy from the parents and from the family and from everyone around them, and so my spirit was like, wait, I thought I was part of divinity. Wait, now you're telling me I'm not. So I'm really confused.
Yeah, so what feels right? So what feels light, right? In Access, they talk about if it feels light, it's true. If it feels heavy, it's a lie, And so, and then you just delete, destroy, and uncreate it. Just having the awareness. And like you said, the layers, I fortunately I didn't grow up in a religious family. So I didn't have that stigma, although it's still part of the collective consciousness. So even though I'm in it, but it wasn't a huge thing for me because I didn't have, I had the choice from birth, right? I kind of came in as a spiritual baby, and then so that's one thing I didn't have to kind of you know
Scrub away with
yeah, scrub
loofah. Yeah.
scrub away. So
Can you touch a little bit on the work you do with animals? I think the listeners would be really fascinated with this.
sure, yeah. So it's interesting. I've always loved animals. I've always been very connected to them. I remember as a young child going to the zoos or the, marine biology places and just having this intuitive feeling that it wasn't good, that being in cages and things like that. And I would, as I got a little older, I would literally be, get a little disruptive and being like, this isn't right. These animals shouldn't be in cages. The sacred rebel that I am. And so my favorite, how do I want to say it? I want to say like mentor, like I always wanted to be Dr. Doolittle, basically. I was like that.
Yes.
That was my idol, Dr. Doolittle. Yeah, it was just like, it's so cool. And so I always had a deep love for animals. I had lots of different animals in my adulthood. I had parrots and chinchillas, and I had an iguana, and I had cats, and I didn't really have dogs, which is interesting considering now that I'm such a dog person. So when I was in a huge transition, I was in my late 40s, and I was transitioning out of being the director of a yoga retreat center that was in the core of an ashram in Massachusetts, and I quit my job. Really didn't have anything to go. I knew the universe was saying it's time for you to do something else. Literally, the grasshopper was showing up. The grasshopper was showing up everywhere, like at the door of my office, the door of my meditation room, the door at my apartment, and I was like, okay, well, clearly the grasshopper means it's time to take the leap. Take the leap. Take the leap.
Hop
Take the
away.
leap.
I love that. I didn't
Take
know
the
that
leap.
about the grasshopper.
Yes, and it take trust, and then your net will appear anyway. So I'm like, okay, like I always let all the major things that I've ever done have all been just spiritually connected and guided. So I quit my job, and that's when it was literally the year of the horse. It was the Chinese year of the horse, and my good friend from further up north, I remember she sent me a picture of those horses she was working with, and I was like, I want to work with horses. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I'm a Reiki master teacher, and so I decided that I wanted to start working with horses. I was sort of scared of them. I there's huge, they're pretty big, and if you don't really know horses, you think they're just very unpredictable, And so I started offering my services of Reiki to therapy horses, which need them a lot. For anybody who knows anything about horses, animals in the wild never need Reiki, never need our healing. They're fine. The only animals that ever need our healing are the ones that have been messed up by humans, right? So meaning, I've worked with a lot of dogs and horses who have a history of PTSD and trauma, and every single one of those situations have been at the hands of a human, right? So whether it be neglect or, the farming, or a horse that has to stay in this tiny little box, 23 hours a day, and starts, cribbing and doing all these really not normal behaviors of, regular animals that have, their needs met. So I started doing Reiki on therapy horses, and it was just amazing. Like the feedback that I was getting from owners, even though a lot of times they wouldn't even believe in it, but they would be like, I don't know what you did, but my horse is a different horse, and these people would make fun of the Reiki, or, people,
Oh, yeah.
they're afraid of things they don't understand.
Right.
And I remember I went to, I was at a farm in Florida, and I wound up doing Reiki on a bunch of rescue horses, and every single horse had a huge transformation, and they were like different horses after. Like one example of one horse who had a bad accident. He had one of those big carts that he was pulling, and then he wound up falling, and the cart like fell on top of the horse, and it was pretty bad. And then the owner was like, he couldn't get the farrier would come to trim the hoof, how they do the feet and everything. And every time that the farrier would come, they would have to give medication to the horse, for him to, because he was so, I'm sure you've seen.
To sedate him?
Yeah, they would have to sedate him. And anyway, so the day, I literally worked with him the day that the farrier was coming, and they sent me a picture after of him with his hoof up. Like they didn't need any medication. Everything was really great. So I have like hundreds of those stories that I'll write a book or something someday. But it's so cool to see the shift, because just like humans, we store energy and emotions. Dr. Bradley Nelson, the emotion code, talks about that we trap and store emotions in our physical body and our emotional body as well. And so when you give yourself permission to release that energy that's being held, that stagnation, it creates space and freedom. And you literally can let go of the incident, right? Like every single thing that we've ever experienced in our lifetime, in past lives, as well as while in the womb of our parent, of our mom, you store it. Every single, even if you think I don't remember that, it's still stored in your body. So through energy work, frequency, crystal bowls, sound, tuning forks, emotion coding, and as well as being directly connected to source and asking my spirit team to assist in the healing as well. Sometimes I'll just say, well, anything left over, please feel free, come on in and do the work. And so when I started working with the horses, it was the first time I was very aware of receiving information from them. So they literally were communicating with me, and I would get information and it would just show up, and I would tell the owners, and it was just so wonderful. I was like, I'm Dr. Doolittle. It was so great. So yeah, it's wonderful. I like working with people, but my absolute passion is animals. Mainly it's dogs and horses who have a history of PTSD and trauma. And so it's teaching the animals to feel safe again. I've had times where I've been doing Reiki on a horse, and then the horse starts to do Reiki on me.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Just this amazing energy exchange, huh?
And it reminds me of what you just said about that woman that you were listening to, is that, we're actually, healing each other, right? Like it's a symbiotic
Yes.
relationship.
That's one of the biggest things I love so much about the holistic medicine model, the alternative medicines. And I say alternative, but I think I mean original.
Mm, thank you. Yeah, that we used to do in the olden days. Like, you remember when we
Doc
were using
Baker.
herbs and oils and all the way, the way that the kings were healed and the
Yes.
medicine women and the shamans, and the witches, and all of a sudden then it was, we don't like this. We don't want to empower people.
Why would we want to do that? We're on to you.
That's great. Oh, I love that. That's so cute.
Okay, so I also wanted to ask, so I know you've spoken a little bit about this, but how is your existence on the planet influenced by your physical, emotional, mental, energetic, and spiritual aspects of yourself now?
As opposed to when I was younger,
As
or
opposed to, sure, now that you know what you know, well, now that you know what you think you know, right? How is
Oh my
that
God.
influencing
I love it.
your own choices and your own direction in
Well,
your life?
I didn't say, but I did struggle for almost my entire life, with anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts, and you had mentioned, uh, not feeling like I belonged, you know, the lack of belonging, and what am I doing here? Like, what is my, you know, purpose, and when am I going to find my tribe? All these things. And it was, yeah, so it was a struggle. I mean, for those anybody who follow astrology, I'm not an astrologer, but I have done a lot of trainings around astrology and healing. And, the Chiron, our Chiron is you know, our greatest gift and our greatest wound. So my greatest wound was the chronic suffering. Suffering. The Buddhists say that all of our suffering comes from wishing things were different than what they are, right? So, how often are we in that space of just wishing something was different than what it is? Whether it's, someone, an animal or a person crosses over, and, you're just like, damn, why did he die? 10 years later, and they're still stuck in that loop of, if only. I think that the deeper that I get into my spiritual practice, and the trusting and the surrender, and the trusting and the surrender to the process, and also in learning finally after 20 years of how to truly be present. The horses taught me how to be present. So that was 10 years ago, and I had been a yoga teacher for 10 years prior to that, and had, thousands of hours of training in meditation. It's not that I did, I was very aware that I wasn't being present, and that had a lot to do with the trauma response, and my limbic system was not healed. And so being in that hypervigilant state all the time, I actually was present. I was so fucking present, right? So, but in that present moment, I wasn't feeling safe. Therefore, I wasn't breathing. Therefore, I was constantly in that state of feeling like my body was in danger, right? So danger, danger, stranger danger, right? All of it. You're not safe. You're not safe. You're not safe. Step away. Step away. Stay. Don't get into that relationship. Don't get too close. And hence the attracting of all the emotionally unavailable men. I went through. That'll be a whole other book that I write.
We're on 3 books
So
so far, you know that, right?
thank you. Thank you. And so I guess today, now it's sort of like, holy shit, like it took all this time on the planet, to finally trust that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be all the time. right? We're always in the right place at the right time, like always. So I always say that, I'm like, well, what if you truly felt that way and you couldn't do anything wrong and everything was just an interesting point of view?
Mhm.
And we were like, ha 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 ha. And you could laugh at yourself and you could lovingly acknowledge when you're beating yourself up and then flip it and then give your inner child the love that it needs. Like I just summed it all up, into a minute of what, right? It's like beat, 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 judge, 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 right?
Mhm.
And then the biggest piece is forgiveness, you know? Like people always think, well, yeah, you got to forgive the other people, and sure, that's great and fine. If you choose to do that, that's okay. However, what parts of you do you need to forgive? And that's where the deep diving comes in, because you're like, oh yeah, all the things that I did because I didn't feel safe, I didn't trust, I got defensive or reactive, and then I couldn't let, this armor up in front of my heart was so, I don't even know how thick it was and how high it was. And there may still be a little bit there, but it's tap, 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 tap. The shield has definitely gotten smaller.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think the self-betrayal has been a really big thing for me in the last couple years, because I didn't see it that deeply, right? I just unconsciously autopilot made choices and decisions based out of fear because I needed to survive. And now when I look back at that, it's like I have cried so hard so many times because I can't believe that I gave all of that power to somebody else and I betrayed my own being. I betrayed my own, just me, like. And it's a really interesting um and beautiful concept when you can, especially in meditation, when you can watch yourself, observe yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and really tap into those parts in your body that are stuck and tight or in pain, and realize that it's you clenching on to something that obviously is no longer serving you, but for so long allowed you to move through the world without breaking down every single day. Those moments, and then they come back to you and you're like, oh my God, I would never have said that. I mean, how many times do we think things about ourselves to ourselves that you would never say to your best friend, you'd never say to your loved ones,
Right.
but yet we have this dialogue that is so abusive to ourselves
Yeah, and I
based
want
on
to
what?
and I want to bring up about that. So let's just look at the physiology and the science behind it. Our bodies are made up of 2/3 water, and so we all know, many of us know about the hidden messages in water, the book, and the studies, long-term studies that have been done on water and plants and all kinds of things. So, they've they've done pictures of the water molecules and what they look like when you speak nice, loving thoughts, angry, mean, and then the neglect where you just ignore it. And so again, imagine that's what's happening every day, all day long. You're thinking the thought, right? Like look at muscle testing or kinesiology,
Mm-hmm.
where when you're in the higher vibrational frequencies, you're strong, right? And when you're in fear, anxiety, anger, irritation, frustration, those emotions, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be there and move through them and check in and see what's happening and have tea with yourself, but when you're living there, like for me, my go-to was anger. I mean, I am a firecracker. I would be flipping the bird whenever I could, F you. I'm a lot of love and light, but I'm also a lot of F you, right? So I have no problem telling somebody to back up. I've never been a pushover, ever. Even when I was a little, I got kicked out of kindergarten.
It doesn't
I
surprise
swear
me
to
at
you.
all. It
I
doesn't
swear to you,
surprise me.
because I wouldn't follow the rules, whatever the rules were that at that time. But come on, I got kicked out of kindergarten. So I was born a rebel, so everybody has their way
Yeah.
of dealing with the response of the world around them, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? There's all these different ways. I'm not saying I haven't done all of those things, but I've been a fighter, and it's a lot of energy and work to be a fighter all the time. It's like warrior. It was just natural. Of course, I'm a spiritual warrior. Of course, I'm going to lead the front. I'm going to show up
Yeah.
and pave the path that hasn't been paved yet. I'm going to be that leader. Like I've always been. It just made sense to me. And then to be a sovereign in my being of the truth and being a truth speaker, even when the majority of the people are believing something else. It's like it's not always easy to do the work that we do, my dear friend.
No, it's not. And through some very great mentors I've had, I'm working my way still through that, in that Brené Brown's, statement of, if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked right alongside with me, I'm not interested in your feedback. So there's that part of me. And then there's also the love, light, and peace that I bring out too. But I wanted to come back real quick, circle back to the water, because I just saw a short clip on social media the other day I think it was just I don't know who it was who said it, but she is so adamant and so protective of the water that she drinks, that if she's even out at a restaurant and there is negative conversation at the table, if there is any vibe other than something that resonates with her, she will not drink her glass of water.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Because she knows that it picks up the vibration of that. She's like, I'm not taking that inside my body.
Yeah.
And how many times have you gone out to a restaurant and you've been to a restaurant 100 times, but that one meal is it just
Doesn't
tastes
taste good.
off, right?
Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny you say that. So I was at the Bucks the other day because I really love their chai, and I always like to go in and be really friendly to everybody and thank them so much for doing whatever they're doing. I ask them. They always shake my latte and my chai. And the woman, I could tell she was, they're busting their asses in there. It's not like they're just, can do. And I said, hey, and I was like, did you make my chai with love? And she wasn't smiling at first, but when I said it, she smiled and she said, yeah, yes, I did. And I'm like, thank you so much. I so appreciate you, because it really, like you're saying, it makes a difference,
It all makes a difference. I
right?
really,
The food.
really believe
And
that it
that's why,
does.
and even, I don't do this all the time, but often before my beloved and I eat, whether we're here or we're at a restaurant, and put my hands on my food and have the gratitude piece and eat. So even if they did fuck with my food a little bit, I can transform the
Yes.
energy, right?
Yeah.
You can always put a little, Reiki love or a universal life force, God force
Yeah.
energy right into that meal and transform the little anger molecules.
Yes. Or like my grandmother used to do, she used to have this beautiful little tin cup on the top of her the range, and it didn't matter what she was making, but every meal she'd pull it down, take the lid off, and throw something in and put it back up. And I was too short, too small, I couldn't reach it to find out what it was. And I watched her one day. I was like, what's in there, Grandma? She's like, it's a secret ingredient. I was like, what's the secret ingredient? She's like, love. I was like,
No.
oh, really? She's like, yeah, I put it in everything I make.
Oh,
I'm like, oh. So I always have a little energetically filled little container in my kitchen that I'll dash it in sometimes. It's so sweet.
That's beautiful.
So we're coming to the close of our little conversation here. So give me some examples of how you find joy, ease, and love daily.
Oh yeah. So my mantra is, be and see the magic in everyday life, right? So how I personally do that is through the animal and the elemental kingdom. So whether that, obviously animals, whether it be on the spiritual plane, I work with a lot of, we'll have to come back and do a whole other podcast on working with spirit animals
Yes.
and power animals. But I do, kind of bring them in a lot. But I would have to say that my garden, being in nature and inviting in all the playful, the divas and the fae and the dragons and the unicorns and, all of it. Like even here's my little baby dragon hanging out with us. He says, "Hi, Danya." And the playfulness, ever since I remembered, one of my favorite books of all times was called Healing with the Fairies by Doreen Virtue. And I read that when I was like 17 years old. And I always was just a believer. And because they are real, like honestly, if you understand about the dimensions and 4D and 5D and how all these things are happening, and I astral project and travel when I sleep, and I swim with the orcas and fly with the dragons, and it's all real. So again, your imagination is your greatest asset, right? So use it.
And I think if I've heard this once this week, I've heard it 2 other times from 2 different people, 3 different people now, that was it Albert Einstein was with students, and they said, "How can we become as smart as you are?" And he said, "Read a lot of fairy tales." And they said, "Well, how can we become smarter than you?" He says, "Read more fairy tales." So you there have permission to go to the library as an adult and go pick up some fairy tale stories and go home and read them or whatever. I think that's magic, right? It's
It is magic. Again, it's another lie that we were sold, that your life is not a fairy tale. Well, why not delete, destroy, and uncreate all that bullshit? Again, think about, we're being, everything, you've heard your reality is created through your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And most importantly, your belief systems. Beliefs before anything is what creates your absolute reality. And everything is just a reflection of that. All the people that are in, on the stage, in your story.
Yeah.
Everything's, we're the common denominator.
Yes.
We're the center. We're the center of possibilities.
Yes, it is. And I'm going to share this real quick with everybody because I think this is just phenomenal. Months ago, before Victoria and I decided to even do this together, I was going through my imagination and the ideas that I was having and coming up, and I had no idea that Victoria's the founder of her business is the Center of Possibilities. So this was something that I drew just not too long ago as my future, and it says the Center of Possibility. So if that's not, attraction, law of attraction, bringing us together and keeping us on the same wavelength, I don't know what is. I just love that
beautiful.
shit.
You can't make that shit up.
No, you can't make it
great.
up. You can't. So anything else that you would like to add before we close today?
It's like, fast forward to your deathbed. What do you want to be remembered for? What are the things that you got on your bucket list that you're waiting for? When blah, 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 like just flip and do it. Yeah. And if not, then either reach out to Danya or myself and have a session to delete, destroy, and uncreate all that bullshit, whatever it is, because it's like the when time, it's all of it is an illusion. It's
There is
just,
no when. There
yeah,
is no when. It's all right now.
I choose now.
Yes,
I choose now. What are you choosing? And just stop making excuses. Stop making excuses.
I know. So I have your web address in the credits for the show, but it's also, I'll just say it out loud here. It's victoriahaffer.com, and you can find all of her information there. I'm so excited for your book to come out. Um,
It might be a while. It
that's
keeps
okay.
changing. It
Sure.
keeps changing. It's like I have it written in my head and then it changes. So I really just need someone to, download, from my head to the cloud. And then
Well, maybe you can work on that. And the next time we speak, you can tell us how to do
the
that.
That's great. Such a pleasure. I love you. I love everybody watching and listening. And please, feel free to reach out. You can find me all over social media.
Yeah,
My name, nothing fancy. It's just my name. So LinkedIn's, Instagram, the Facebooker, Meetup, all of it.
perfect. Well, thanks again, Victoria.
Peace out, everybody.